I stormed out of Thanksgiving dinner, and my phone hasn't stopped ringing since. My family's been trying to reach me, but I can't answer. My hands are trembling, my heart racing, and if I try to speak, I might scream, laugh, or both. The worst part, I almost stayed. I nearly sat there, smiling through my mom's relentless questions about when Emily and I would finally have kids and pretending to care as my dad droned on about his house refinance. I almost swallowed the bitterness, letting it poison me inside, and acted like everything was normal. But I didn't. It all unraveled when Emily arrived, hours late, not just fashionably so. She swept in, kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong, as if she hadn't just left me alone at the table, making excuses for her absence. She looked too composed, her hair hastily retouched, her scent different, perfumed by cologne I didn't recognize. I dismissed my suspicions until my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check her glove compartment. My stomach knotted. Whoever sent that knew something. With shaking hands, I took her keys from her bag and slipped outside, the cold air stinging my skin. I unlocked her car and opened the glove compartment. Inside was a motel key card and a folded receipt. The receipt was from 2 hours earlier, paid in cash. As I stared at it, the world seemed to tilt. On the back, a name was scribbled in hurried handwriting. My mind spun, and before I knew it, I was back inside, gripping Emily's chair. "Emily," I said, my voice foreign to my own ears. She blinked at me, confused. I held up the receipt. Her eyes widened momentarily, panic flashing in them, before she masked it with cold indifference. "What's this?" I demanded, keeping my voice steady. She glanced around at the now silent room and incredibly rolled her eyes. "A receipt," she said flatly, sipping her wine. "Are we really doing this now?" I clenched my jaw. "A receipt for a motel room, from today, 2 hours ago. Who is he?" She sighed, irritated. "I have no idea what you're talking about." I laughed, actually laughed, though nothing was funny. "You don't know? You don't remember paying for a motel room today?" She gave me a smug smirk and said, "Maybe it's yours." Something inside me snapped. I wasn't sure what I would have said next, but my mom cut in. "Emily," she said sharply, "what's going on?" Emily sighed, setting her glass down, feigning victimhood. "I don't know, Carol. Maybe your son should stop going through my things and making up stories." That's when it happened. My father, usually the calmest man I know, stood abruptly, his chair nearly toppling. "Enough," he said, his voice like a gunshot. The room fell deathly silent. "You think we're stupid, Emily?" he asked. Her smug demeanor faltered. "What?" "I saw you," he said, his gaze unwavering. "At the gas station on Route 9, 2 hours ago, getting out of a car that wasn't yours." My stomach dropped. "Dad," I croaked, "are you sure?" "100%, he confirmed. Emily let out a nervous laugh. "This is insane. You're all ganging up on me." "Who was in the SUV?" I asked, my voice tight with fury. She scoffed. "A friend." "Name." She rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, you're being dramatic." No one came to her defense. I stepped closer. "Say his name, Emily." She hesitated. That pause told me everything. I dropped the receipt onto her plate, grabbed her keys, and walked out. Now, I'm sitting in my car, staring into the cold night while my phone buzzes nonstop. Calls from my family, not Emily, not one call from her. That silence says it all. I should drive away, but I can't. My mind is stuck replaying the last hour. I went from celebrating Thanksgiving to discovering my wife sneaking off to a motel. The worst part? I still don't know who he is. The name on the receipt doesn't ring a bell, but its presence means everything. A sharp knock on my window startles me. It's my dad, with my mom standing behind him on the porch, her face pale. I roll the window down, barely able to meet his gaze. "Son," he says firmly, "you need to come inside." I let out a bitter laugh. "Why? So Emily can gaslight me again?" "She's gone," he replies. Grabbed her purse and took off. Of course she ran. That's what Emily does when cornered. She escapes. It's a pattern I'd seen in arguments. though this time was different. This was undeniable proof. Where do you think she went? I ask hollowly. Back to him, my dad answers without hesitation. The words hit like a punch to the gut. I grip the steering wheel until my knuckles whiten. Did Mom see the receipt? He nods. We all did. So, now what? I mutter, anger clouding my vision. I want to go home, toss her belongings onto the lawn, and be done. But I also need answers. How long has this been going on? Who is this guy? I stare at the name on the receipt again. There's one way to find out. I open my phone and search. The results make my blood run cold. The name, Daniel Carter, isn't random. He's someone I know, my wife's boss. His LinkedIn photo stares back at me, that smug grin I've seen 100 times before. This wasn't a mistake. It was calculated. Emily had been sleeping with her married boss. I scroll further and find a corporate event photo from 3 months ago. There she is, standing too close to him, her hand resting casually on his arm. His wedding ring gleams under the lights. 3 months. How long has she been lying to me? A fresh wave of rage surges. I shove my phone away and get out of the car. My dad watches me carefully. Everything okay? He asks. No, I rasp. Not even close. Her boss? He asks after a moment. I nod grimly. His expression darkens. Do you know where they are? The motel, I think. I might, I say. He nods. I'll drive. We pull out of the driveway in silence, leaving my buzzing phone and stunned family behind. If Emily thought she could walk away unscathed, she was wrong. Dead wrong. The room number was 214, second floor, at the far end. We climbed out of the truck, the only sounds coming from our quiet footsteps. My father trailed a few steps behind, steady and supportive without a word. I ascended the stairs, adrenaline rushing through my veins until I stopped in front of the door. That's when I heard it. Emily's laughter, carefree and light. It struck me like a physical blow. I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard her laugh like that, but here she was, sounding like nothing in the world had ever troubled her. My father's hand rested on my shoulder, a silent reminder to stay composed. I knocked twice. The room went silent. After a pause, I heard shuffling and a low voice. The door creaked open, and Emily peeked out. Her face morphed from confusion to horror in seconds. I didn't let her react. I shoved the door open and stepped inside. Daniel Carter stood in the middle of the room, his shirt undone and his belt hanging loose. For a moment, no one spoke. Emily's face was pale, her mouth moving soundlessly. Daniel stumbled backward, raising his hands in surrender. What the hell, man? He stammered, his voice weak. My pulse pounded in my ears, and my fists clenched. I wanted to break him, make him feel as humiliated and worthless as I did. But I held back. For now. I turned to Emily, the woman I had trusted with everything, who had just hours ago looked me in the eye and made me feel crazy for suspecting anything. She swallowed nervously. It's not... I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Don't even try. She flinched. Let me explain, she pleaded. Explain what? That you've been sneaking off to motels with your boss? That you've been screwing him behind my back while I was too blind to see it? My voice rose, echoing off the walls. What exactly can you explain, Emily? Her mouth opened, but before she could speak, Daniel made the mistake of stepping forward. Look, man, I get that you're upset. I spun on him, and he stumbled back. You don't get to talk, I hissed, my voice low and dangerous. Not one damn word. His face went pale. He tried again. Listen, it's not... A chuckle interrupted him. My father, who had been silent until now, stepped forward slowly, arms crossed. What were you going to say, Daniel? My dad asked, his voice calm, almost amused. That it's not what it looks like? That you respect my son? He tilted his head. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're standing in a motel room half-dressed. Daniel swallowed hard, glancing nervously between my father and me. Emily turned toward me, her hands raised as if in surrender. Baby, please! Don't call me that, I said, my voice shaking with fury. Her face crumpled, as though she might cry. I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. I turned to Daniel. Does your wife know? All color drained from his face. Emily gasped. Don't. Oh, now you don't want to talk? I laughed darkly. That's funny. You didn't have a problem when you were screwing your boss in some cheap motel. She gasped again, this time with indignation. You're being cruel, she snapped, like she was the victim. I leaned in close, my voice dangerously low. Cruel? You want to talk about cruel? Cruel is making me sit at my family's table, smiling and pretending everything's fine while you're in bed with him. Cruel is lying to my face over and over, making me feel insane for even suspecting something. She had no response. I took a step back, exhaling sharply. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from clarity. This was over. We were over. I turned to Daniel. Your wife will know by morning. Count him on it. His face crumpled, panic written all over it. I turned to Emily, the stranger I had once called my wife. You deserve each other, I said coldly. Rot in hell! Without waiting for a reply, I walked out. I don't remember descending the stairs or crossing the parking lot. My mind was stuck in that room, replaying their stunned faces. The motel door slammed shut behind me, but I didn't care if Emily followed. My dad was right behind me. Neither of us spoke until we climbed back into the truck. He exhaled slowly, shaking his head. That woman is evil, he muttered. I didn't answer. I pressed my palms into my eyes, trying to block out the headache splitting through my skull. Emily was gone, not physically, but in every other way that mattered. The woman I had loved, the woman I thought I married, didn't exist. Maybe she never had. She didn't even try, I whispered. My dad glanced at me. What? She didn't even try to lie, I said with a bitter laugh. She just looked annoyed like I was ruining her night. He tightened his grip on the wheel. That's because she checked out of this marriage a long time ago. I swallowed hard, my throat thick. And I didn't see it. Because you loved her, he said simply. When you love someone, you don't go looking for signs that they don't love you back. We drove in silence until my phone buzzed. For a moment, I thought it might be Emily. It wasn't. It was Daniel Carter's wife. My dad noticed. You going to answer? I hesitated, then swiped to accept. Hello? There was a brief pause. How long? She asked, her voice cold but trembling, barely containing her rage. I found out tonight, I replied. You're sure? I caught them at the motel 10 minutes ago. Another pause. Then she spat. That piece of garbage. I knew something was off. The late nights, the business trips. God, I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. Yeah, I said bitterly. Same. Silence stretched between us before she asked, Are you divorcing her? I didn't hesitate. Yes, good, she said, her voice steely. Because I'm about to ruin his life. What? You don't understand, she said, her laugh bitter and humorless. I've been waiting for an excuse. He thinks he's so careful, so smart. Well, guess what? I have everything. Bank statements, expense reports, all of it. I'm going to take him for every cent he's worth. I blinked, stunned. Then I smiled for the first time all night. Let me know if you need anything. Oh, don't worry, she replied. I will. She hung up. I stared at the phone for a moment, then looked at my dad. He raised an eyebrow. That sounded like revenge. Yeah, I exhaled. I think it was. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a hint of relief. The drive back to my house felt surreal, like I was outside my own body. By the time we pulled into the driveway, my hands had stopped shaking, but the fury still simmered beneath the surface. My dad shut off the engine. She's probably still at the motel. Good. I unbuckled my seatbelt and stepped out of the truck, jaw clenched. The house loomed in the darkness, eerily quiet. It used to feel like home. Now it felt like a crime scene. You want me to stay? My dad asked, lingering at the door. I shook my head. Number, I need to do this alone. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Call if you need me. I will. I closed the door behind him and leaned against it, exhaling hard. The silence was suffocating. Then footsteps echoed on the porch. The doorknob twisted, and there she was. Emily. Her hair was a mess, her eyes wide, cheeks flushed like she'd been running. "Baby," she breathed, stepping inside. "We need to talk." I didn't move, didn't blink. I just stared as she shut the door like she still belonged there. Like nothing had happened. "Don't cheat," I told her, my voice cold. "Leave before you ruin everything." She rolled her eyes. "You really think you're perfect?" I stopped, turning to meet her gaze directly. "No," I said quietly. "But I was good to you, and even that wasn't enough." For the first time, her expression twisted, like she didn't recognize me anymore. It was as though she finally realized the man who had worshipped her for years was gone. I zipped the suitcase, lifted it off the bed, and shoved it into her hands. "Get out!" She hesitated, just for a moment, then scoffed, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "You'll regret this." I laughed, a genuine bitter laugh. "Emily, I regret ever meeting you." Her nostrils flared, but for once, she had no comeback. She stormed out, dragging the suitcase behind her. I waited, listening to the sound of her car peeling out of the driveway before I finally allowed myself to breathe. When I did, it was like I was inhaling fresh air for the first time in years. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, a strange new silence filled the house. It wasn't the oppressive, suffocating silence from before. It was lighter, peaceful. I stood in the center of the living room, staring at the empty space she had left behind. The faint scent of her perfume still lingered, but was already fading, just like she was. I exhaled slowly, rubbing my face. I should have felt shattered, but I didn't. I felt free. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and cracked it open. My hands were steady now, my mind clear. I had done it. I had confronted her, thrown her out, and hadn't let her twist the narrative to make me feel like I was the one at fault. I wasn't the fool in this story. She was. My phone buzzed again. Expecting another call from my mom, I glanced at the screen and froze. It was Daniel Carter's wife. I stared at her name for a moment, then answered. "I did it," she said without preamble, her voice shaking with what sounded like triumph. "Did what?" I asked. "I told his parents," she replied, the emotion in her voice swelling. "I told everyone. His mom is screaming at him right now. His dad called him a disgrace. His sister said she always knew he was a piece of garbage." I rubbed my jaw. "Damn. Oh, and did I mention," she continued with a sharp edge in her voice, "I threw all his clothes on the front lawn. Every last piece, even the expensive suits. And it's raining." I let out a low whistle. "You don't mess around," she laughed, this time with real amusement. "Neither do you." I hesitated. "So, what now?" She sighed, but it wasn't a sad sigh, more like relief. "Now, I finish what I started. I've already called my lawyer. I want everything. He's going to crawl out of this marriage." I smirked. "Sounds like a plan." "Yeah," she agreed, pausing briefly. "And you?" I exhaled, glancing at the half-packed suitcase still in the corner of the room. The emptiness of the house weighed on me, but it wasn't crushing. "I don't know yet, but whatever's next, it won't involve Emily." "Good," she said, her voice lighter. Then, after a moment, she added, "You know what's funny? They probably think we're the villains. Emily and Daniel, I mean. I bet they're sitting somewhere right now, telling themselves we overreacted." I snorted. "Yeah, because exposing cheaters is the real crime here." "Exactly," she chuckled softly. "Well, I won't keep you. But if you ever want to grab a drink and laugh about our exes ruining their own lives, let me know." I smiled, a real, genuine smile. "I just might take you up on that." We said our goodbyes, and when I hung up, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. And damn, it felt good. The next morning, I woke to peace. No Emily, no tension, no fake smiles concealing lies. Just quiet, and I liked it. I got out of bed and walked through the house, half expecting to find her in the kitchen, pretending nothing had happened. But all that remained was the empty space she left behind. Her closet was half empty, her bathroom counter clear. The only trace of her was an old hairbrush and a few bobby pins scattered in the corners, like a ghost that had forgotten to take all its things before vanishing. I brewed a cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and let it sink in. I was free. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. A text from an unknown number. Emily. I stared at it for a moment, then opened the message. Emily, I hope you're happy. You humiliated me in front of your whole family. Was that what you wanted? I laughed, really laughed. This woman, this delusional, narcissistic woman. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even embarrassed about being caught. She was mad at me. In her mind, she wasn't the villain. She was the victim. I took a sip of coffee, the bitterness settling on my tongue, and then I typed my response. Me. I am happy. Happier than I've been in months. You did me a favor, Emily. You set me free. I didn't wait for her reply. I blocked her number, set my phone down, and leaned back in my chair. Outside, the sun was shining, the air crisp and fresh. A new beginning. A clean slate. I breathed in the quiet, and one thought settled firmly in my chest. I had survived. And I would never let anyone like her into my life again, because now I knew my worth, and it was so much more than she ever deserved.